The crimes of Jeffrey Dahmer stunned the world. With 17 murders, he made his small apartment into a violent death chamber. Jeffrey even thought that he was so evil that he was equal to the devil. Jeffrey Dahmer was born in Milwaukee, Wisconsin on May 21, 1960, the first child of Joyce and Lionel Dahmer. He seemed to have a fascination with animals as a child. He was so curious that he liked to feel anything around him, the texture, the smell of everything he touches. His family then moved to Ohio, where a 7-year-old Jeff began to show a shy behavior and seemed to be awkward socially. In his teenage years, he continued his fascinations with animals and curious on what they look like inside. He began collecting roadkills and bring it at the back of their house and dissected it. That was sort of the starting point of his downward spiral. He felt sexually attracted only to men. At 14 he had these dark thoughts. He fantasized to knock out a local jogger with a bat and lay next to its body. He then devised a plan and waited for him, but the jogger didn't run by. In his high school, his sexual fantasy traumatized him and he began drinking early morning at school. After his graduation in high school, his parents divorced and his father moved out. After some time, her mother and his younger brother David decided to move to Wisconsin, leaving Jeff behind. Alone and no one to talk to, he decided to make his fantasy into reality. Jeffrey Dahmer, aged 18, was driving along the highway when he saw hitchhiker 18-year-old Stephen Hicks. He then went back into his house and drank beer. When Hicks said he needs to go, he knocked him out with a dumbbell and strangled him to death. He then dismembered his body and put in a plastic bag. He drove along the highway heading to the dump site. He then stopped by police for drifting across in the center line. Jeff told police that his parents just got divorced and he couldn't sleep, so he decided to go out and dump the garbage. The police let him go with a ticket. His father went home and discovered Jeff is all alone, so he decided to move back in. He later advised Jeff to find a job. He then joined the military as a medic. For the first time he was happy and outgoing. But after he was deployed in Germany, he then gets back into drinking, and the reason why he got discharged early. He went to Miami and rented a hotel, and after a couple of days, his bill went crazy because of alcohol consumption and got kicked out. Jeff then slept at the beach of Miami. He called his dad and went home to Cleveland. His dad tried to turn his life around by helping him, but to no avail. His dad sent him to his grandmother and lived there for 3 years. He went to church every Sunday and even got a job, but this didn't last. At the library, a man handed him a note offering sexual favors, but Jeff declined. But this was the turning point. It awakened the dark sexual desire inside him. He then started to explore Milwaukee and went into one of the bathhouses, which men wanted anonymous sex. He drugged the men he met, and while asleep he listened to their heartbeat. He then overdosed one victim and was brought to a hospital, so he was later banned in the bathhouse. Then he discovered the gay bars, which will become his favorite hunting ground. Then he met Stephen Toomey. After some drink they went into a hotel nearby, and in the room, he drugged him, and early in the morning, he found Toomey hanging beside the bed, full of bruises and has blood on his mouth. He then bought a suitcase and crammed Toomey's body inside and brought it back into his grandmother's house. He then discovered the body in the basement. At the bus stop he met 14-year-old James. He offered money to come to his house, and after that he drugged and strangled him to death. His grandmother later kicked him out because he's always late all night, and also there's an unidentified foul smell in the basement. He then rented an apartment in the west side of Milwaukee. Then lured a 13-year-old boy into his apartment, but got scared when he fondled him, and ran away. Jeff got arrested for sexual assault charges, and was put into a dormitory where he would stay for 1 year and can still go to his job at the chocolate factory. While serving his sentence and going to his job normally, he continues his killing spree. One victim almost got away, a 14-year-old Conorak Synthosomphan. After he slept, Dahmer went out to buy more beer, but the boy woke up and started running outside. The neighbors called 911. The police came and asked Dahmer, but he said they were in a relationship, and showed them some photos of them in his apartment. The police then reported it as a lover's quarrel. He wants his victims to stay with him and never leave, so he tried to experiment. He drilled their skull with holes and inject an acid to their brains, to make them like a zombie. But none of his victims last a day. He started to eat their flesh to stay with him forever. His apartment now has stockpile of dead bodies, and his neighbors started complaining with indescribable foul smell. He later put his victim's body into a big drum and filled it with acid, melting the victims inside, turning them into a sluggish liquid, and flushed it all into the toilet. One man, Tracy Edwards, was able to get away and flagged down a passing patrol car. When the police officers went into his apartment, they've discovered a Polaroid photo that is so horrific, a photo of his dead victims. Some of them are decapitated. An officer said that when he opens the icebox, he heard a scream, and he later realized that it is he himself who had screamed, which he found a fully fleshed skull in it. Dahmer then quickly arrested and later confessed to the horrific crimes he did. He was then put to trial and was sentenced to a 937 years prison. But it would last only a few years, as he was bludgeoned by a fellow inmate, Christopher Carver, who called himself Christ. Dahmer died on the way to the hospital. Dahmer asked to be cremated and his ashes are split between his mother and father. In his last will and testament he asked that he doesn't want a funeral, or a mark. He wants to be wiped out completely into this world.